For most of history, the human mind was considered private territory. Thoughts were invisible, beliefs were personal. Identity felt untouchable. But during the 20th century, that idea quietly collapsed. Governments and institutions began to see the mind not as something sacred, but as something measurable, influenceable, and eventually controllable. What followed were experiments that never appeared in textbooks, studies that blurred the line between science and coercion, and programs that permanently altered how we understand free will. The justification was always the same: fear, war, national security. In moments of global tension, curiosity turns aggressive, knowledge becomes a weapon, and ethics become negotiable. The mind, after all, leaves no scars that cameras can easily capture. Damage can be denied. Memories can be questioned. Trauma can be reframed as necessary sacrifice. The earliest experiments did not begin with cruelty. They began with questions. How does isolation affect perception? How long can the brain function without sleep? How easily can authority override moral instinct? These questions sounded academic, harmless. But the answers revealed something deeply unsettling. The human mind bends far more easily than we like to believe. One of the most disturbing discoveries was how quickly identity can dissolve under pressure. Extended isolation alone proved enough to distort time perception. Minutes stretched into hours. Thoughts looped endlessly. Without external reference points, the brain began to generate its own stimuli. Hallucinations emerged, not because of illness, but because the mind requires interaction to remain stable. Silence, when prolonged, becomes an attack. Sleep deprivation produced similar effects. Subjects deprived of rest began losing emotional regulation first, then memory, then coherence. Simple tasks became overwhelming. Moral judgment weakened. After enough time, suggestion replaced reasoning. The exhausted brain no longer evaluates information. It accepts it. This realization would later become central to more aggressive forms of psychological experimentation. Authority was the next variable. Researchers discovered that when an authoritative voice framed actions as necessary, participants obeyed even when it conflicted with their values. The presence of a lab coat, a clipboard, or institutional language dramatically increased compliance. People trusted systems more than their instincts. Responsibility shifted away from the individual and on to the structure giving orders. This was not merely an observation about behavior. It was a blueprint. If obedience could be engineered through context, then conscience was not a fixed trait. It was conditional. Experiments demonstrated that ordinary individuals, placed in controlled environments, could be persuaded to act against others without direct coercion. All that was required was perceived legitimacy. Memory itself proved unreliable. Researchers found that memories could be altered, reshaped, or entirely fabricated through suggestion. Subjects confidently recalled events that never occurred. Emotional detail made the false memories stronger, not weaker. Once implanted, these memories integrated seamlessly into personal identity. The mind did not distinguish between authentic experience and constructed narrative. This discovery raised a terrifying implication. If memory defines identity and memory can be rewritten, then identity itself is fragile. Experiments stopped being about observation and became about intervention. The goal shifted from understanding how the mind works to exploring how it could be modified. Some programs escalated further. Subjects were exposed to sensory overload or deprivation. Bright lights, loud sounds, complete darkness, repetition. The intention was to destabilize cognitive anchors. When the brain cannot rely on consistency, it seeks guidance. In that vulnerable state, suggestion becomes power. Consent often existed only on paper. Participants were rarely informed of the true purpose or potential consequences. In some cases, they were not informed at all. Vulnerable populations were targeted because they were easier to control. The ethical framework we now consider standard simply did not exist yet. Or rather, it existed, but was ignored. The psychological damage was not temporary. Many subjects reported lasting anxiety, dissociation, and difficulty trusting their own perceptions. Some experienced persistent paranoia. Others lost confidence in their memory. The experiments ended, the consequences did not. At the time, these outcomes were often dismissed. Researchers attributed symptoms to pre-existing conditions or environmental stress. Responsibility was deflected, documentation was limited. In some cases, intentionally destroyed. Knowledge advanced, but accountability lagged behind. What makes these experiments particularly disturbing is not just what was done, but how calmly it was justified. Language sanitized reality. Terms like conditioning, desensitization, and behavioral adjustment masked profound harm. The mind was treated as software. If something malfunctioned, it could be reset or replaced. Over time, internal concern grew, not because of empathy, but because the results were unpredictable. The human mind did not respond uniformly. Some subjects resisted manipulation entirely. Others broke in unexpected ways. Control was never absolute. The variables were too complex, the cost too high. This unpredictability forced a reckoning, not a moral one at first, but a practical one. Experiments that produced unstable outcomes were liabilities. They created damaged individuals, not reliable assets. Slowly, restrictions emerged. Oversight committees formed. Ethical guidelines were drafted, not out of compassion, but necessity. Yet even as rules were introduced, they were applied selectively. Classified programs continued beyond public scrutiny. Information asymmetry allowed dangerous practices to persist under the shield of secrecy. The public narrative emphasized progress and safety. The internal reality remained fragmented. One of the most unsettling aspects of these experiments is how relevant they remain. Modern environments replicate many of the same psychological pressures. Isolation, information overload, authority signaling, repetition. The difference is scale. What was once tested in controlled rooms now exists everywhere. Understanding this history is uncomfortable because it removes comforting illusions. We prefer to believe our thoughts are our own, that our decisions reflect autonomy, that manipulation is obvious and rare. These experiments demonstrated the opposite. The mind adapts quickly, and adaptation can be exploited. This does not mean resistance is impossible, but it does mean awareness matters. The most dangerous experiments were not those that failed, but those that worked quietly, those that left no visible trace, those that redefined normal without announcing the change. By the time ethical standards were formalized, The damage had already shaped modern psychology. Many insights we rely on today came from studies that crossed lines we now consider unacceptable. Knowledge was extracted at a human cost that is rarely acknowledged. And this was only the beginning, because once the mind was mapped, measured, and manipulated, attention shifted elsewhere, to something even more tangible, more measurable, more final. The mind could be influenced, but the body could be pushed, and that next phase would redefine the limits of human experimentation entirely.